This week on the Red Sneaker Writers Podcast.
I always say writing is a muscle, and as a matter of fact, if I'm speaking to like a high school student group or something like that, and they are, thoroughly unimpressed by the middle-aged man in front of them, and I feel like I need to get their attention, right? I ask them, I say, okay, who here has seen LeBron James naked, right? And then I raise my hand because I used to be a sports writer in a locker room, right? And so there's LeBron James and he's changing his clothes. Now, this is not, I don't care if you're gay, straight, somewhere in between, whatever. LeBron James naked is a really impressive thing to see, okay? I mean, he is an extraordinary human being. And people are kind of giggling or maybe feeling slightly uncomfortable. Maybe your audience is feeling slightly uncomfortable right now, Bill. I don't know. But but the point is, and then I say, he didn't get that way by sitting on the couch, right? He works out incredibly every day. He's a notorious gym rat. His work ethic is known throughout the basketball world, right? And you have to be the LeBron James of writers if you want to be any good at this, and that means working hard every day. I do believe that writers have to write every day.
Welcome to the Red Sneaker Writers Podcast. News, interviews, and writing tips for people who are serious about having a writing career and want some practical knowledge to help them achieve it. Your host is the nationally best-selling author of more than 50 books, William Bernhardt.
Hello, sneakers, and welcome back to the podcast. I've got a truly great show for you this time. I'm getting very excited about WriterCon, our annual writers conference, which takes place over Labor Day weekend. That's September 3rd through 6th this year. It's going to be the biggest and best conference yet. I'm telling you, more speakers, more agents, more editors than ever before. And please remember, even if you can't come to Oklahoma City in person, you can stream the whole thing from home. You can watch the sessions online for a month after the conference. No excuses for not taking part. And if you're a fan of this podcast, get this. Jesse, my co-host and sound engineer, the real draw of the podcast, as I've said before, Jesse will be there talking to people, interviewing people, and live streaming this podcast on Saturday, live from WriterCon. Jesse, are you up to this massive technological challenge?
I am very excited to attempt a live video recording from a location. This is going to be interesting, and I hope that hotel's internet is good. So
we are, in fact, ponying up for extreme internet. We have to because we're streaming the whole thing.
No,
so
true.
It should be more than enough bandwidth, I hope. We'll find out, right?
Yep. Yes, we'll find out. We'll find out loudly, I imagine, from people if it does not work.
So all of you writers, aspiring writers, please check out our website, writercon.org. That's, you can see it right in front of you, but for the audio gang, WRITERCON.org. Take your writing career to the next level. Today, my guest is Brad Parks, internationally best-selling author of many mystery novels and thrillers, 10, if I counted correctly. He has won the 2010 and 2014 Seamus, getting one for Best First Novel and then again for Best Novel, which nobody's ever done before. He's gotten the 2010 Nero Award, the 2013 and 2014 Lefty Award. In fact, he is the only author to ever win three of the most prestigious crime writing awards. His new book, there it is, Unthinkable. And we'll be talking about that with him later. But first, the news. Our first story has to do with Amazon and specifically what they call their A+ content option, which used to be just for the big guns, but now is being made available to everyone, including KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, meaning self-published authors. Have you ever noticed that Amazon book product pages sometimes they showcase like gorgeous interior photos of the book, or they integrate blurbs or blurb graphics or things like you can see right now on the screen that Jesse's showing. You're looking at A-plus content, a Amazon product page feature that gussies it up, adds graphics, makes it pretty, makes it look special. And once upon a time, that was just available to big publishers. But now, just right now, practically is open to anyone who's using Amazon KDP to publish. With A-plus content, you could add images, text, comparison tables, blurbs, whatever you want to your product detail page to engage readers and give them more information so that they will want to buy your book. There are a lot of rules about what you can and can't do. You can only have so many blurbs. You can only mention an award if you won it in the last 2 years, which, I mean, what's that about? Like, I won the Pulitzer Prize 4 years ago, but I can't mention it because time has run. This makes no sense. But the point is, this is something that can really dress up your book page. Amazon says that A-plus content increases sales on average by 5.6%. There are real studies indicating that it varies depending on what kind of product you've got, because, of course, Amazon sells things other than books. But people have said that this A-plus content increases the conversion rate by somewhere between 3 and 20%. And by conversion rate, I mean converting people who click on your page to people who buy on your page. And as if that wasn't enough, A-plus content is actually indexed by Google. So that means when people are searching for something, your A-plus content could be included in the search. So you've just increased your search engine optimization efforts. I wanted to mention this in part because it really is a big deal, particularly, I think, to people who are publishing on their own. But also, there have been other Amazon innovations before, and it always seems to me that the early adopters benefit most, the first to be on Kindle Scout or Kindle Vella or whatever it is that time. And after a year or so, probably everybody will be doing it. So here is your opportunity. I'm telling you right off the bat. So please take advantage of this, as many authors are doing. A romance writer, Jillian Dodd, has created an entire story with her different images for a book called That Boy. Go check it out. You scroll down and it practically tells the story of this woman's dating life. Or Penelope Bloom has used A-plus content to give readers a close upfront look at the hero of her book. The book's called The Boss Hole. Don't ask. You really don't want to know. But, the bottom line is there's increasingly little that we can control within the Amazon environment. So it makes a lot of sense to take advantage of what you can and give buyers as much information about your book as possible. Jesse, I know you buy books online sometime.
I do.
Does this kind of advertising influence your purchase?
No, I have a weird thing about reviews that have ellipses in them. I just don't trust them. I'm like, what did they cut out? Like, if
be making it shorter, Jesse.
I understand that philosophically, but in my mind, I just fill those ellipses with all the words they don't want in that review. Here's the thing: I don't get my book recommendations come from either people or from like websites about the genre in which I like reading. So I like reading fantasy novels. So like Tor.com, when they recommend a book, I'll read that. But mostly, when it comes to Amazon advertising, I mostly don't pay attention to it because it's everywhere, and it's usually for something I've already bought.
So you wouldn't go in for the A-plus content, or maybe we should just assume you're that 80% who aren't in the conversion rate.
I'm definitely in that 80%, but I also think that there is a way to make this more engaging than just like what the examples here, because like you don't need to advertise. Like Stephen King doesn't need to mention reviews. Like people know whether they like Stephen King or not. And
see, I should have given you graphics from people like I was just mentioning, Penelope Bloom and whatnot, because their A-plus content has nothing to do with blurbs and obvious promotional stuff. They're just making the book more interesting and more fun. And, showing you what the hero looks like or telling you in 50 words the history of the female protagonist.
Yeah, I would like that. I put both of the links for those stories in the chat, so if people want to check those out, they are there.
Great. Okay, news item number 2. I think you'll like this one. Hardcover sales are up. In a recent webinar that was delivered by Ingram, their content group, Ingram, as you probably know, is the primary distributor to bookstores, and they also have Lightning Source, which is a print-on-demand publisher that many, not only self-publishers, but increasingly large publishing houses use. Anyway, they shared this graph, which shows ever-increasing sales of hardcovers, in their case, print-on-demand hardcovers, because they're one of the relatively few places that you can go to get a print-on-demand hardcover. That is, get just what you need when you need it instead of printing 1,000 on an offset press or whatnot. You may remember a recent story when I said Amazon is preparing to add that to KDP, although even then, those hardcovers won't have dust jackets. The cover art will just be stamped onto the outer cover. Ingram can give you dust jacket and good quality hardcovers, and apparently there's a reason to do it, because according to their statistics, there is untapped sales potential for publishers who aren't offering their backlist in the hardcover format. In other words, people will buy hardcovers even if they don't have to. I mean, in recent years, people have been, particularly self-publishing folk, have been skipping over the hardcover on the theory that who wants that? They'd rather have the less expensive trade paperback. But this might be wrong. Maybe some people who want the nice book that is comfortable to hold and looks well. Really, libraries have been keeping hardcover presses and printing in keeping it going, but maybe there's more demand than that, and anybody realize. Even as tracked by NPD BookScan, hardcover sales are up 23.4% versus last year, 2020. Of course, paperback sales are up too, but there may be reason to think about doing a hardcover of your next book, even if you weren't planning on it. What do you think, Jesse? Would you ever buy the hardcover if the paperback was available?
I love hardcovers. First of all, paperbacks are usually too small, like to read comfortably for me. And I like to buy the hardcover of a book I like, and then also buy the ebook so I can read it on my Kindle. I like owning the physical media. I don't necessarily like reading it anymore, just because the books I read are usually very large and heavy. So, but I'm also concerned about that massive drop in 2021. Did they talk about what that is?
You mean in the middle of the graph?
Yeah.
That's not 2021, is it? That's what
it
is
looks
that?
Like 2021. Is that like when people, when states started opening up again and people just stopped buying books for a month?
I don't know. I'm hampered by the fact that I'm colorblind. But at any rate, the point of this is supposed to be that hardcover sales are up. In fact, Ingram says that they're printing twice as many hardcovers each month as they did last year. And that's, but it sounds like you want all three. You want the hardcover, the softcover, and the ebook.
I do. I like books.
And maybe the audio as well. I mean, I'm kind of spoiled. I always feel like I'm fighting it when I read a paperback because, you've got whereas a hardcover, you can just sort of rest in your lap or whatever.
I feel like a paperback, I'm worried about breaking it all the time.
Okay, 3 more quick stories and then we'll bring on our guest. Number 3, Kensington launches a new cozy mystery line. Kensington Cozies will launch at the end of this year and feature stories with, and here I'm quoting from their press release, little to no violence, profanity, or sex, likable amateur sleuths, tight-knit communities, and series arcs that allow the protagonists to grow in their professions and relationships. Kensington, of course, is a longtime and very prestigious New York publisher. Item 4, Draft 2 Digital, who we've mentioned many times, the distributor, aggregator, primarily of ebooks, but not exclusively. Anyway, they've now created a poetry template. Part of the appeal of Draft 2 Digital is that they offer these prefab templates. You can upload the content of your book, and it makes it very easy to make it look good and to distribute. But they haven't been available for poetry in the past. As well, I know I was trying to publish a poetry book for someone, and trying to format it with the weird line breaks and whatnot was all but impossible. Sounds like Draft 2 Digital has now licked that problem. And finally, last item, you'll be happy to hear that it's a fact. Americans are reading more. I mean, we all suspected that, right, during the lockdown and people were home more, but it is a fact. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, reading time increased 21% between May and December of last year. And get this, the biggest increase was among readers between 20 and 34 years ago, which gives us some hope for the future of writing, not to mention books, right? And if all those new readers are looking for something great to read, I recommend Unthinkable by Brad Parks, a terrific new book. Brad, are you with us?
I am absolutely with us. With that kind of segue, Bill, how could I not be with you? I mean, you bring me in with fanfare. I love it.
Fantastic. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
It's good to be here. Just don't call me Boss Hole.
Yeah,
I don't know what Boss Hole is. By the way,
apparently that's some kind of romance novel, but maybe
and I definitely don't want to know what Boss Hole is. By the way, Jesse, you are right to be suspicious of Ellipses. I was recently, this book was reviewed in the Wall Street Journal, and I heard from a former publicist of mine saying, "Hey, congratulations on the Wall Street Journal review. You know, that's kind of a big deal." And I wrote back, "Yeah," and the pull quote is actually really, really awesome as long as we throw in a few strategic ellipses. And she wrote back, "My job these days is ellipses management." So, yeah, it's it's part of the business. So
listen, I don't want to take food out of people's mouths. So like, keep using ellipses.
I'm just saying. Just a little dirty. You just need you don't need a full shower. Just maybe, wash your hands and a little washcloth in the face, something like that.
Like you get one, you don't get two.
Yeah,
like two is like two. I'm like, they're definitely leaving out something very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have an ellipses and also a parentheses, but only for grammatical purposes? Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, see, Bill's not going to give me that.
Right. Well, he's the author, so
I just want to make sure they're not deleting, passable,
other than the horrible
or
ending.
marginally, or yes, or that, even more so. Okay, Brad, traditional first question.
Okay.
If you could offer writers one piece of advice right up front, what would it be?
So I might begin with fall in love with writing, not with what you've written. But that's actually not a Brad Parks original. That's Reed Farrell Coleman. And while Reed's a great guy, I don't want to give him that much credit. So I'll start instead with
use some ellipses to take something out.
Before you write well, you have to write poorly. And you have to embrace writing poorly. And your goal as a writer, no matter what stage you're in, is to be able to look at something you wrote 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is, and say, "Oh my God, that was a steaming pile of crap. I'm so much better now." Right? And I think that really is, again, no matter where, if you're a bestseller, if you're just starting out, because what that really forms in you, and some of you who are teachers or in the education field will start nodding, knowing what I'm talking about. It's what's called a growth mindset. And growth mindset has become, a real buzzword in education. But it's in Carol Dweck, if I'll give her full credit. It's this idea that, this thing called writing, or any ability you want to look at, it's not fixed, right? It is not like you are not born with this much writing ability and that's all it's ever going to be for the rest of your life. It can grow, it can get better. And your job as a writer is to grow yourself as a writer. And so if there's really specific advice in that, especially for younger writers, but no matter what phase you're in, put yourself in a position where you will be forced to write. And where you will have to push yourself to write. So like for me as a young writer, I got my start in newspapers. Right. And I started covering sports for my hometown paper. I would cover high school sports for them, right? But then I would always try to find
babysitting. I read.
Yes, exactly. But I would always try to find more writing jobs because I knew that would get me, just writing more and writing. And my goal was always, let me find the job or the assignment or whatever that makes me the best writer I can absolutely be. Not for now, but for later. Like that was always the goal. And that kind of long-term growth strategy is, I think, really vindicated itself over the years.
I think that's a great point to make because I know I've encountered at seminars or WriterCon early writers who get discouraged because they're trying to write and it's not brilliant, the first time they sit down.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I believe that there is a writing gene or natural talent. I think it comes with time and effort, don't you?
Yeah, no, and I always say writing is a muscle, and as a matter of fact, if I'm speaking to like a high school student group or something like that, and they are, thoroughly unimpressed by the middle-aged man in front of them, and I feel like I need to get their attention, right? I ask them, I say, okay, who here has seen LeBron James naked? Right. And then I raise my hand because I used to be a sports writer in a locker room. Right. And so there's LeBron James and he's changing his clothes. Now, this is not, I don't care if you're gay, straight, somewhere in between, whatever. LeBron James naked is a really impressive thing to see. Okay. I mean, he is an extraordinary human being. And people are kind of giggling or maybe feeling slightly uncomfortable. Maybe your audience is feeling slightly uncomfortable right now, Bill. I don't know. But but the point is, and then I say, he didn't get that way by sitting on the couch, right? He works out incredibly every day. He's a notorious gym rat. His work ethic is known throughout the basketball world, right? And you have to be the LeBron James of writers if you want to be any good at this, and that means working hard every day. I do believe that writers have to write every day. And again, it can't just be, I'm just going to dribble the ball a little bit. It has to be the writing equivalent of a sprint, right? And I don't mean that means you have to write fast or that you have to write a lot, but you have to write hard, right? You have to stretch yourself. You have to work yourself. And, that's how you become, the LeBron James of writers. And when you look at, here's another little fun factoid. And I hate to keep mentioning sports, but Bill, I did get my start as a sports writer.
I got that.
Yeah. So the NFL, the most successful sports league in America, there are roughly at any given point in time, 1,700 people who get to call themselves NFL players, right? Now, I have another question for you. How many books, my genre is mystery, so I speak specifically to mystery, but how many mystery books does Publishers Weekly review in a year? It's actually about 900.
Really?
So that is the top of my field, right? If you get a review in Publishers Weekly, that shows you must be, kind of, at or near the top. 900. So it is twice as selective to get a review in Publishers Weekly as it is to make the NFL. Do you think NFL players are lazy? Do you think they're just, going, oh, I'm so talented? No, they bust their butts and they have sacrificed for years and years to get where they are. And you cannot expect as a writer to sacrifice any less.
Great points. Great points. Although, if I'm going to be the LeBron James of writers, do I have to make Space Jam? Because I thought that was a little.
It's a prerequisite, man. But then you also win a couple of NBA finals, and who wouldn't like to do a movie with Tweety Bird?
I would, just not that one. But since the whole time they're talking about how he's the greatest basketball player who ever lived, he can probably manage to live with that, I'm guessing. Hey, so given what you just said about dedication and effort and muscle, what's your writing process look like? Take us through your writing day.
Oh, Bill, I just sit on the couch and eat bonbons and let the inspiration strike like everybody else.
I'm
it's
betting
so
not.
Easy, Bill. No, so I am, like I said, I believe in you have to write every day. I write 1,000 words a day, which is actually not that much. I mean, so I kind of arrived, I won't go into the long story of how I arrived at 1,000 words a day, but I'm not the only 1,000 words a day person out there for sure. But to me as a newspaper guy, that was basically like a newspaper article with a little extra stuff put in, right? And that was something that I knew how to do. Like that was, it's 4 pages for those of you who'd rather count pages. And it takes about 3 or 4 hours. But it's not really it's not so daunting, right? Especially like I do little tricks with myself where I start with my word count. Okay, so I'm looking down on my screen right now. Okay, there's my word count. So I'm at 31,500. So, so if I just get to 32,000, then I'm like almost there. And then it's just 32,000 and a little more. And then, you play these mental games with yourself and then you're there. But, you write 1,000 words a day and guess what? You have a full manuscript in 3 months.
That's right.
So that's my, that's my discipline. And basically I'm a first thing in the morning writer. I get out of bed, I throw some water on my face. I put on ratty old clothes. I don't shower, I don't shave. And it's like, as soon as I can get my hands on the keyboard, that is going to be a good thing for me. And I write until the words don't make sense anymore. And that generally takes about 4 hours. And then I'm fortunate enough that this is what I do full time. So my kind of little reward at that point. Well, I then exercise, because I really think that's an important thing for writers as well. And then I get to goof off. Like that's always my reward. Like okay, I have done my writing, I've done my exercise, I've been a good little boy. And yeah, in the afternoon, I may, as you well know, being an author is kind of like being a small business owner. There's always some businessy stuff. Yeah, but it's not really what I'm getting paid for, right? So it's kind of, answering your agent's email, it's not really working, right? So that's kind of my day. And then, I always say, I'm going back to the sports thing again, Bill. I hate to do this. So those of you who are not sports fans, I promise I'm going to make an opera reference soon. Okay. I just bear with me.
Not on my behalf.
But I really do treat myself like an athlete in season, right? Where that 4 hours is game time. Mm-hmm. But then the other 20 hours, I'm kind of structuring in a way to make that 4 hours the best they can possibly be. And this is in particular when I'm drafting a novel. I'm in that, that first draft where I'm a pantser, not a plotter. So I don't know what's going on necessarily. And it really requires a lot of focus and concentration and emotional energy and creative energy and all this kind of stuff. So those other 20 hours are making those 4 hours as best as they can be. So that's exercise. I hate to say it, guys. For those of you who are Cheetos fans out there, that's eating right. No, I'm serious. Because if I know if I exercise and eat well, I'll sleep better. And sleep is absolutely huge for a writer. And I'm also, I'm always kind of this is the other good thing about writing every day. And by the way, I have been also a full-time employee who has tried to write every day. So I get that involves a lot of sacrifice and whatnot. Yes. But when you are in touch with the manuscript every day, even if you don't have that beautiful 4 hours that I am so fortunate to have, if you have an hour, if you have 2 hours, and by the way, everybody, maybe if you're a subsistence farmer starving, you don't have 2 extra hours a day, but everybody can find 2 hours a day. I mean, right. I did it when I had little kids and a full-time job, and it's not easy. I always tell the story of Mary Higgins Clark. She's a personal inspiration of mine. Her husband died at a very young age, leaving her to raise and support 4 children all by herself. So she had 4 kids. She worked a full-time job in advertising, and she got up at 4:00 in the morning and wrote at her kitchen table. And then she would, for 2 hours, maybe a little bit more, until the kids got up, and then she had to get them to school, get herself to work, and do it all over again and everything like that. Mm-hmm. If Mary Higgins Clark, single mom of 4 with a full-time job, can find a way to write, you can find a way to write too.
Right. And what I like about getting up in the morning and getting it done is that, as you said, you can goof off later and not feel bad about it.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas if I skipped the writing and went and just said, I'm not going to, I've got too much, then I would feel miserable and guilty about it all day long.
Although I certainly have friends like Joelle Charbonneau, who's a great YA writer. It's funny when she and I are at conferences, I'm the guy who's like, it's 10 o'clock. Oh my God, I'm getting so tired. I never stay up this late. And she's the one who's like, oh, I'm actually going to go write now. Because she writes from 10 o'clock at night until 2 o'clock in the morning, man. That is her time. She is alive. She needs all day to warm up, and then boom, it comes out. So, know thyself, as the Greeks would say.
As long as it works.
Yeah,
let's talk about this pantser versus plotter thing, because Unthinkable, which is a terrific book, by the way.
Thank you.
So much plot, intricately plotted, twists and turns. How do you make that happen without planning? I mean, surely you can't have a big twist unless you've thought about, how you're going to mislead the reader. How can you do that as a pantser?
Actually, Bill, you can if you are bored and impatient enough, if that sounds weird. So when I'm writing, of course, I'm also reading. And if I'm getting bored by my own writing, something is desperately wrong and I need to change something. So it's really a case of, don't be boring. I always tell people, cut the boring parts out. Okay. Don't tell yourself, oh, but I really need to have that scene. If when you get into that scene, you're like, God, this is boring. Right. Okay. That's a scene that needs to be about a sentence and a half of exposition and then move on to something that actually is interesting. Right. So I'm easily bored. There's a lot of self-loathing involved, so there's a lot of like, oh my God, this sucks. What am I doing? Why do I ever think I could be a writer? Like I should have gone to law school. What am I doing? Like that kind of that really positive reinforcing kind of talk. And then actually typically what I do is having, convinced myself that I'm the worst person who ever lived and should never write another sentence. I then complain to my wife about how miserable my life is and how I really like, is it too late to get like a nursing license or something? Because nurses, they always need nurses, right? And then my wife will be, well, honey, what's going on? I'm like, I'm stuck. Oh God, I'm stuck. And she'll be like, well, honey, what did you do the last time you got stuck? Like, maybe I went for a run. She's like, why don't you go for a run? And then, I go for a run and about a mile or two in, I think of the plot twist or whatever that like has eluded me. And then I come home, I'm like, honey, I am the greatest writer who ever lived. You are so lucky to be married to me. I'm so amazing. But, like that's a lot of it. It's like you're kind of working through it. The other thing I've really learned, the hard way over the years is listen to the characters and trust the characters. And this is Bill, like we're going to start sounding a little woo-woo here, but I often find that when I'm writing a scene that is not working, it is because I am forcing the character to do something they don't actually want to do or is not natural to them. And I'm forcing them to do it because I'm trying to serve my story, right? Mm-hmm. Versus when I kind of sit back and go, okay, what would Bill do in this scenario and kind of make it organic about the character, then surprising things happen and real things happen. And then furthermore, as I listen more, I talk to my characters and I ask them questions. Like my favorite twist in Unthinkable, that beautiful book behind you, was not a twist in any way I'd planned out. And now clearly, Bill, I do start with at least some ideas of maybe some twists along the way that I don't know how I'm going to get there, but whatever. But the best books are where that twist that you planned or those twists you planned end up ranking, 4th, 5th, and 6th on the list of the best twists in the book. Because the best ones come from character and the best one comes from the situation and paying attention and listening. So like in Unthinkable, I had this one character who I kept going, why are you doing that? No, wait, why are you doing that? Like, and I didn't know. And about a third of the way through the book, the character kind of told me like, this is why I'm doing this. And I went, oh my God. And that ended up being the twist that I've now, the book has been out in the world for about 2 weeks now. And I've already gotten numerous emails from readers saying, oh my God, that thing at the end of chapter, I don't want to spoil anything, blew my mind.
And I'm like, I know what you're talking about. But
I know it blew my mind when I came up with it too, and those are like, and it came from character,
So then after you've written this unplanned twist, you then have to go back earlier in the book and plan to rewrite or have it make sense?
I'm definitely, I will go back and make it seem like I knew what I was doing even when I didn't. But sometimes I don't like, and so like I have another book, The Last Act, where a similar kind of thing happened where I got the characters in this awful situation. I had no idea how to get them out. I went for a run, didn't solve it, went for a run, didn't solve it. On the third run, I was about like 4 miles into a 5-mile run, and suddenly the answer came to me. I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I, sprinted home. I was so happy. But it turned out that a character, and again, you can't give too much away. Character was not what I thought the character was, right? But because I had not written the character that way all along, the twist was so much more rewarding and it was so much more surprising because even I didn't know who the character really was. And then finally the character revealed themselves to me. And then suddenly I have this amazing twist. So this writing process, let's be clear, Bill, I have thrown away entire manuscripts where like I get to the end and actually it's generally with some nudging from like my agent or something like that. But I realize, I tried to walk the tightrope and it just didn't work this time. And so, I don't want to have a bad book out there. And so I throw it away.
Throw it away?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I have some first drafts I haven't pursued, but I didn't throw them away.
Well, okay, they're on my hard drive somewhere, but I'm not going back to them, right? Or, or they're 30,000 words or 60,000 words. Like I can remember there was one novel, I think I started in 2018, something around the line, where I'm like, okay, I'm 60,000 words in, but like I think it's a little too easy to know who the bad guy is. So I sent it off to my agent. I said, could you just give this a read? And she's a really fast reader. She literally called me the next morning, and her first words out of her mouth were, okay, so I know who the bad guy is. It's like, well, all right. And that was a book I couldn't actually fix. It was not salvageable. So I threw it away. So this way of writing is not without risks and pitfalls. And I break a lot of eggs making that omelet, baby. But, you bump and grind through, and then, did I just say bump and grind? I don't even know what that means.
But in a different context.
Yes, strike that from the record. Anyhow, like you get through it, and then obviously I do a lot of rewriting at the end. I do a lot of like, oh, that's where I was going. Let me go back and put this in, put that in. But it's a terrifying way to write. But for me, again, this is find what works for you, right? So one of the books I threw away was a complex thriller. It kind of had like 3 plot lines that all needed to arrive in the same place. And so I did an 18,000 word outline, right? Where, because it just had to mesh. And I would wake up every day and go, okay, I'm writing the scene where this happens. And so says this to so-and-so. And so, okay. And I start, and like, there was no energy in the book. There was no surprise. There was no juice in the writing, because the discovery, which is the part that really enthuses me, was already done. And it was not, okay, so just like paint by numbers is not art, this was not art for me. The art really comes in feeling like the work is alive, in listening to the characters, in responding to the plot twists that I've, so if I already suddenly have 2 twists that I didn't anticipate, those change the entire landscape. And I can't just still be married to the twist that I did know was coming, right? And just being comfortable with that kind of craziness. And also I think I get, and this is, I'm 11 books in, you get kind of comfortable with, the Raymond Chandler line is the gun in the cookie jar. Sometimes 30,000 words in, you just put a gun in the cookie jar, and you don't know why you put a gun in the cookie jar, right? But at word 80,000, suddenly the character goes to the cookie jar and there's a gun, and it's really handy. And so sometimes I'm putting guns in cookie jars throughout the first 30, 50, 60,000 words of the novel, not knowing when or how I'm going to use them. And if I get to the end and I haven't used it, well, then I take it out. Right. But oftentimes that thing that I have planted, even though I don't know what I'm going to do with it, turns out to be really useful.
That makes sense. And let me say, while I'm thinking about it, to those of you watching this live as it's happening, if you've got some questions for Brad, please just type them into the chat box and we'll make sure he answers them.
They're probably a little bit scared, Bill. They're like, are you sure? You asked this guy one question and he never shuts up. We're not sure.
No, they love that.
Okay, good.
Hey, I know you wrote several books with a series character, Carter Ross, 6, I think. And the last 4 books have been standalone thrillers.
5 actually.
5.
So I'm up to 11 now.
Why the shift? Why from series to standalone? And really from mystery to thriller, I think, to some extent.
So it's partly personal, it's partly professional, to be quite honest. The personal part is Carter Ross, my protagonist, was an investigative newspaper reporter in Newark, New Jersey. I, at a certain point, was an investigative newspaper reporter in Newark, New Jersey. So when I started writing it, that was actually the job I had, the life I was living. But then I quit that job. We moved 3 states away. And I found myself getting further and further away from who that guy was. The other thing that happened is, Carter was kind of this go-lucky bachelor guy. He, he had a girlfriend, but, whatever, and whereas I was, married, we had 2 children, so I was getting further away from that life too. So that was part of it, I think. But then the other part, the professional challenge was I felt like I knew how to write a Carter Ross novel. And I could have kept writing Carter Ross novels, and I have not precluded going back there, by the way. I definitely have some hardcore Carter Ross fans who are always bothering me. Every time I put out a cover for my next book, they go, that's great. When are you going to write Carter Ross again? And I reserve the right to return to Carter Ross, and I hope to someday. But to stretch myself as a writer, I felt like I had to try something more ambitious, to try something that really stretched me. And for me, that is the standalone. The other thing about standalones that's fun, I mean, there are obviously comforts to a series of, the world, the character, and you're exploring those character arcs, and that's great. Versus in the standalone, you're starting all over again every time. Oh my God. But the one thing I do really love about standalones is no one is safe. And in a thriller, that matters, because
Right.
with
Sure.
Carter Ross novels, I'm not going to kill Carter because, frankly, Bill, my children want to go to college someday. So, he's okay. And I'm not going to kill his best pal, Tommy Hernandez, because I know from my reader email that like half the readers, that's their favorite character. So I'm not going to kill him because they'll find me and burn my house down. I'm probably not going to kill his girlfriend, right? So like, there's these people that like when I have these conversations with my characters, so this is another thing I do, Bill. I told you I get bored easily, right? And sometimes when I get bored, I just kill someone. Like this little bell goes off in my head, ding, somebody needs to die. And so I gather all my characters in a room. And because I talk to them, I say, folks, have some bad news to deliver here. One of you is going to have to die in the next scene. I'm sorry, and when you do that in your series, Carter Ross is always kind of standing there over in the corner going, hey, I'm cool. How about the rest of you guys? Ha ha. Versus in the standalone, everybody is nervous at that point.
Right.
And hopefully I can impart that on the reader too, of like, you just don't know who's going to get killed next. And I just love that feeling.
So instead of the standard mystery trope of gathering all the suspects so the detective can announce who really did it, you gather all the characters to announce who's going to die next?
Pretty much. Well, that's, I subscribe to the definition that there's two definitions of a mystery versus a thriller. One is that a mystery is about solving a crime and a thriller is about preventing one. But I also love Tess Gerritsen's answer to this question. What's the difference between a mystery and a thriller? And she says about $100,000.
Yeah. Which may be the best answer of all. So you've been doing this a while, 10 books, 11? What is it now?
11 books, yeah.
Since I was short a thriller, I'm guessing it's actually 11 now. What are some of the things you've picked up? You said writers grow, so there must be some things you learned in the course of writing those 11 books that perhaps made you a better writer. Can you think of anything you've picked up along the way?
I'm always working on my craft, Bill. There is no part of me, like you mentioned the awards I've won, and that's very nice. And by the way, I would like to add that I won the National Book Award in 2009, but that was too long ago to mention in my bio for Amazon's purpose. So I don't need to mention it anymore. But it's funny though. You set the award down next to your keyboard, and that the damn award plaque does not type a single word for you. Ungrateful. But so I think I'm always trying to get better, and I always want to be able to say that my next book is my best book yet, right? And I think the other thing that I have come to embrace over the years is there is so much about publishing that I can't control. I can't control, what Barnes and Noble does with my book. I can't control who reviews it. I can't control, what the Salesforce here is doing or what the Amazon algorithm is doing over there or whatever. And when I try to think about those, and those things can become overwhelming for writers, right? Because that's so much of, going to determine our success of what is the Amazon algorithm feeling about your book today, right? And who the hell knows? And so when I focus on those things, I get really unhappy. But when I focus on the things that I can control, i.e., what is between the cloth bindings of that little book behind you, I'm just in a much better place, And so really focusing on process and really focusing on I'll be candid because we're 45 minutes into this podcast. So I'm thinking the only people left, Bill, are the real diehards, right? So my first standalone was a book called Say Nothing. And I loved that book. And frankly, it did not sell as well as the publisher hoped, right? And there was a while where I really beat myself up about that, and I felt awful. I mean, even though the critical reception for it was amazing, I think both Kirkus and Library Journal named it one of their top 10 books of the year, which is okay. And I think it got 3 out of the 4 gave it starred reviews, but it just didn't take off. It didn't become Gone Girl or anything close. And, I felt really disappointed about that. And it got me down in the dumps for a while, until my agent pointed out, she said, you know what? You did your job, right?
Yes,
your job was
good point.
to deliver this amazing book. And by the way, the publisher didn't buy it and they bought it for a nice amount of money. They didn't buy it for a nice amount of money because they thought it was going to tank. And let me be clear, not that it tanked. Again, it's just, it's all an expectation game. But, they bought it because they thought it was going to sell a lot. And in order to sell a lot, you need all the stars to align, right? You just need everything to come together perfect. And it's fun when you see it happen. Sean Cosby, S.A. Cosby is one of my friends. And he wrote a book called Blacktop Wasteland last year that really just took off. And now his book this year, Razorblade Tears, is again, really coming through. And, and suddenly, but it was Blacktop Wasteland was the right book at the right time, the right voice.
Right.
Sean is, he's African-American and he's from the rural South. And it was this voice that frankly had been underrepresented in our genre. There was a lot of urban Black voices, right? But not a lot of rural. And his writing was terrific. And the characters were just really, you cheered for them, but they were real and raw. And, it just, everything came together. And by the way, at a time when I think, coming off of George Floyd, people were suddenly having this moment of awakening going, why aren't there more Black voices in fiction? What's going on with that? And then boom, here comes this fresh, awesome writer, right? And so to watch Sean kind of catch lightning in a bottle, or frankly, and now I'll talk about myself, right? That book that I told you, that book that I told you that, did not meet expectations here in America became a huge bestseller in Germany.
Yeah. Go figure.
Right? Go figure. Well, but there were things that happened for it. They had an excerpt printed in all of the main train magazine in Germany, and Germans ride a lot of trains. And so for about a month in the front flap of every train in Germany, sitting right in front of you, was a magazine that you pulled out, had my book excerpt in it. Right. And, that's that kind of magic that you can't predict that. You can't make it happen. And so, boom, I was new over there. I had never been translated into German before that book. And so I was a debut author over there. For those of you who have not been published yet, your debut book is a special magical kind of capital that you only get once. So spend it very, very wisely, because everybody wants to see the new kid on the block, And so in Germany, I was the new kid on the block. Back here in America, it was, Brad Parks has written another book. And that's a different kind of narrative.
And so it's kind of different. Yeah.
You kind of see how all of these ingredients, some of which completely are beyond your control, have to come together. And so just because they didn't for that book say nothing, my agent was right. And again, it took me a while to come around to this, but I did my job. I wrote the best book I could. And that's what I have to do. And you know what? Okay, so the book behind you, right now, I'm going to be having a meeting with a screenwriter who is going to be shopping it with producers. And I have a very APA talent agency is representing that book in Hollywood right now. And APA is very powerful. Steve Fisher is a great agent. And so maybe that gets made as a series or a movie. And suddenly maybe I catch fire, right? Does it actually make the book any better? No, but if I don't catch fire, so what am I supposed to say to myself? Say that doesn't happen. Because the movie thing is so capricious and so unpredictable. So if it doesn't get made into a movie or a Netflix series or whatever, does that mean the book was worse? So you kind of, this is a really long answer to your question, but I have learned to love the process and to invest myself in the process and to know I can control only that and everything else is beyond my control, and have faith and comfort with that. No matter what happens when the book goes out.
Well, that's the best attitude to have, and much better than
checking your Amazon ranking 15 times an hour. Yeah.
Well,
and I've done that too. So,
or I've heard, and I bet you have heard, very successful authors griping because their book only went to number 3 this time.
Oh my
God! At number 1.
Yeah, I did have an author say that to me one time.
For that matter,
he was specific. He's like, I write legal thriller. I write great legal thrillers, and I've never been higher than number 4. And John Grisham writes them, and every time he goes to number 1, and it's like, oh, you've never been higher than number 4. Poor man.
You want me to buy dinner? Yeah,
get a grip, dude. Yeah, exactly. He probably.
And
did.
I know I do, and I bet you also have friends whose books sell better somewhere else, Europe or wherever, than they do here. There's no explaining that. I always tell people, when do you get published? when you got the right book in the right place at the right time. I can't predict when that will be, but I can predict it's only going to happen if you keep writing, right?
You keep writing. Absolutely. The only way you are a failure at this business is, well, one, if you die, at which point, hopefully you won't care anymore.
Yeah.
Or two, if you quit. The only way only you can make yourself a failure. And another thing we talk about a lot in our house is grit, which Angela Lee Duckworth has a great TED Talk about grit and a book about grit. And I won't, because I have tended to go into monologues in this podcast, I won't go into a long monologue about grit. But the beautiful thing about grit is, one, it is the greatest predictor of success out there, according to Angela Lee Duckworth. And two, it is, I'll unpack that. You have me back on again, and I'll give a whole podcast for you about grit. But two, it's something you get to decide, right? You and you alone decide if you're gritty. And I think about all the lows I've had, and we have not gotten into these, but those novels I threw away. You think it's easy to throw away 100,000 word manuscript? You think I just let that roll off my back like nothing? Oh my God. I'm crying. If I had quit at that point, none of the great things that have happened in the last few years in my career would have happened. Right. And that's so you as tough as this game is, and man, it's brutal. You gotta stay in it, or else you're done. But again, only you can make yourself a failure.
You've been in this game for a long time. If we count writing for the local paper when you were a kid, and then did I?
That's true. Yeah, hold it. Yeah, what year is it? So hold it. 1980, 33 years.
That
if
you've
I'm
been
doing
writing?
the math right. That I've been a professional. I've been a professional writer for 33 years.
Didn't I read that you were the youngest writer at the Washington Post at one point? And so
I was
did
at
that for a while.
Time. Yeah, they. This was back in the old days when newspapers were still expanding. I know, crazy, right? So I was 21 years old, and I was hired by the Washington Post.
Do you think that journalistic or nonfiction background is helping you write novels?
It does and it doesn't. I mean, it definitely helped develop the writing muscle. Because I would, back when I was a sports writer, I would end up writing 3,000 words in a day. And by the way, that's cut across 5 different stories for 10 different editions, right? You do that, and that certainly works the muscle. The other thing that's great about sports is everybody in sports already knows what the final score is. And they've seen the post-game stats and all this kind of stuff. Your job is to go to the ballpark or the arena or whatever every day and find a story, right? So it's find a story, tell a story, find a story, tell a story, find a story, tell a story. And you do that every day of your professional life. It does kind of develop a good sense of story. So I brought that with me. And I think the other thing I brought with me is, you write no matter what mood you're in. Right? You don't believe me, at a newspaper, when you're covering the New York Yankees, you don't get to call up the desk at 10 o'clock and be like, yeah, the game is over. And I know you're expecting a story, but I wasn't feeling it today. You just you learn, no, you're right. That's what you do. You're not waiting for the muse. You're not hey, whatever. And I think I take that same attitude into my fiction writing of this is what I do. I do it every day. Whether I'm feeling good, feeling lousy, I sit down, I write my 1,000 words. And what's remarkable, Bill, is when I get to the end of the book, so I'm 90,000 words later, at word 45,000, was I in a good mood? Was I in a bad mood? Was I feeling inspired that day, or was I feeling like crap? I don't know, right? And that's what you need to have the faith. So just do it, man.
So what can we look for from you in the future after everyone has devoured Unthinkable? And you really should, because it's a terrific book. But then what's next from Brad Parks?
I mentioned those kids who need to go to college. So more books. Yes, writing. Yeah, I love it when people ask, because I am a full-time writer, and I think people have this idea that, that this is somehow an act of leisure on my part, I'm some gentleman of letters or something like that, and they're like, oh, you just finished a book? What are you going to do now? As if my answer is going to be, well, now I'm going to master the cello. No, I'm going to write another freaking book. So my 2022 book is actually already written. I don't know what the title is yet. And I don't want to say a lot about it in case my editor makes me change everything in it. But it's already it's ready to go. So and then there will be another one after that. I mean, this is
right. This has been a real pleasure, Brad. I do want to have you back on the podcast whenever that next book comes out, or maybe even just for chuckles. But it's been great having you on. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Bill, great being here.
Hey, everyone. Don't forget, did I mention WriterCon? Yeah, I bet I did. Don't forget to register for WriterCon Labor Day weekend, September 3rd through 6th. The website is writercon.org. Please rate or review this show wherever you get podcasts. And remember, you can follow this podcast so it'll be automatically downloaded for you each time we load a new episode. And if you like the video version, you can subscribe to the William Bernhardt YouTube channel, and then you'll get email whenever we're live streaming or whenever it's completed and it's been uploaded. You can watch all of the episodes after it's been done, whether it's new or not. They're all up on that YouTube channel. Until next time, hey, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. So don't quit. See you next time.